What is the India-Nepal border issue? And are global economic trade ties resembling the initial era of Cold War? And what about the non-market economy status? Hello everyone, I am Srivastava and I'm here with the 3 must-reads from the Indian Express today. आज की तारीख है May 9th of May और आपके current affairs preparation के लिए there are so many news items today in the newspaper. Now, the first pick today, for the first pick I would like you to go to the explained page of the Indian Express. और जब आप इस एक्सप्लेन्ड पेज पे जाएंगे देयर इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉरेन पॉलिसी एंड डिप्लोमेसी से रिलेटेड एक्सप्लेनर एंड दिस एक्सप्लेनर टॉक्स अबाउट अ बॉर्डर इशू. Okay, this is a broader issue of a border issue between India and Nepal, the India-Nepal ties ka border issue. Now, if you see this explainer, I think first you should pay attention to the excerpt. The excerpt are the lines just below the headline. So look at it and you'll get the context. It says, the Prachand cabinet's decision to put a map showing areas in India as part of its territory on a new currency note has drawn a strong reaction from New Delhi and is seen as a provocative by many in Nepal. What is the history of this disagreement and of the efforts and its resolution? Now, first thing first, take out your atlas, open the map where you can see India and Nepal, the South Asia map and the Asia map, and keep it in front of you. While you're reading this explainer, this is important to keep looking at the map. Remember, you have to also look at not only the states of India which share the borders with Nepal, but also look at the rivers, look at the important towns which are and the cities which are mentioned in the explainer, and also see it with respect to other countries around. Okay, so your focus should not just be limited to that India-Nepal thing, but also to the countries which are around, especially China. This kind of exercise will help you not only to understand what is here in the piece, but also to go beyond the headline and gain certain knowledge. So this is how this piece has to be read. Now, quickly come to the second paragraph, because the second paragraph gives you a little geographical information. Now, the territorial dispute is about 372 square kilometer areas. That includes, and there are name of 3 towns. One is Limpiadhura, the second is Lipulekh, and the third is Kalapani at the India-Nepal-China tri-junction. Now, quickly look at the map which has been, put here, and a very important map, and you would see the pass. You will see a name of a river. You will see Kalapani, and you will see Uttarakhand of the India and Nepal. Okay. So look at these important points. Now, Nepal has claimed for long that these areas belong to, it's both historically and evidently, so Nepal has been talking about it. So obviously there has been India-Nepal talks on this issue, and there's a recent statement by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also on this. Now, when you go to the genesis of the issue, so I don't want you to go through every bit of talks which have been held in history, but a few things. For example, when you go to Genesis, there is the second paragraph, and in fact, in the first paragraph, there is a very important treaty which is being mentioned, Treaty of Sugauli. Now, this is something which you have to underline. The Treaty of Sugauli at the end of the Anglo-Nepalese War in 1814-16 resulted in Nepal losing a chunk of territory to the East India Company. Article 5 of the treaty took away the jurisdiction of Nepal's rulers over the land to the east of the Kali River. Now, this river in local language is also called Kuti Yangti. Okay, if I'm pronouncing it right, that is the name of the river in the local language also. So when you read the second paragraph, you'll get to know about this river. Now, how to see this explainer? Of course, you have to go through the whole explainer. जो भी आपको important events लिखें, just note it down somewhere. Especially with the from the perspective of geography, just look at this explainer. But at the same time, this aspect should be very clear to your mind that it's not just India and Nepal, it's also China there. Okay, so there is this very important line which says that Kathmandu have over the years taken up issues of border encroachment with both India and China. Okay, so Nepal is at a place where you have this Indian territory, Indian states also, but also you will see Nepal also. So this is the place which will be influenced by both India and China's perspective. So उस हिसाब से आपको इस पूरे न्यूज़ आइटम को देखना है, and of course keep noting down the important places, the important events in the history which have been mentioned here. ठीक है, and you will see that as the news develop, जो news का जो further development होगा, you will find those issues very simpler because you have covered the basic. Okay, so this is a nice explainer and a very informative explainer, and it has to be read and noted down intelligently. Okay, now let's come to the second must read from the Indian Express today. और जब मैं second must read की बात करता हूँ, I'll come to the economy page, the next page, which is the economy page, and here we are going to talk about the global economic trade ties and why is it resembling the initial era of Cold War, not according to me but according to IMF's Geeta Gopinath. Okay, so IMF's Geeta Gopinath says that global economic trade ties are fast resembling the initial era of Cold War. Now सबसे पहले तो आप अपनी वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री की बुक उठाइए, नोट्स उठाइए, जस्ट क्विकली लुक एट व्हाट वाज द कोल्ड वॉर, जस्ट ब्रीफली यू शुड जस्ट रिवाइज इट. कोल्ड वॉर क्या था, व्हाट हैज हाउ हैज इट इम्पैक्टेड द इकोनॉमी ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. ठीक है, ये थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ आइडिया आपको होना चाहिए. जस्ट लेट्स लुक एट द फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ इसलिए हम देख रहे हैं ताकि हमें कॉन्टेक्स्ट पता चल जाए. ओके, सो इट सेज दैट एज इकोनॉमीज रीवैल्यूएट द ट्रेडिंग पार्टनर्स फॉलोइंग डिसरप्शन ड्यू टू कोविड-19 pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, global economic ties are changing in ways not seen since the end of the Cold War. So this is said by the first deputy managing director at International Monetary Fund, IMF, who is Geeta Gopinath, and she said this on Wednesday. Now, along with this, she says some very important lines, and these important lines actually are the base for this kind of an argument she makes. She says, foreign direct investment flows, that is FDI flows, are also being redirected along the geopolitical lines. How? She explains, some countries are re-evaluating their heavy reliance on the dollar in their international transactions and reserve holdings, she said while speaking at the Stanford Institute of Economic Policy Research on the future of IM, the International Monetary System. Now also she adds another important line. She said there has been a marked increase in gold purchase by central banks during 2022-23, driven by concerns about the sanctions risk, especially by China bloc countries. So there is an increase of gold purchases. Okay, and why? Because there's a fear that there can be sanctions, by the China bloc countries, so they are purchasing more gold. Now, she has pointed out something related to the to the trade relations, and very specifically she talks about China here, and she says, and you must note it down, that the economist further pointed out that the recalibration of trade relation is also reshaping currency composition of trade finance, especially for China leaning countries. Now how currency composition कैसे change हो रही है, especially for the countries जो कि China की तरफ हैं थोड़ा, and the increasing use of Chinese currency, which is RMB as we all know, may have been supported by the cross-border interbank payment system, that is CIPS, a system launched by the People's Bank of China, which offers clearing and settlement services for cross-border transaction in RMB. Now see, this cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, becomes a very important question for your prelims based examination also. These objective examination, they can ask you that who launched it, for example. Okay, this is the most simple thing they can ask you, but they can make it a little complicated there. तो यहाँ पे ये समझाने की कोशिश की जा रही है कि जो इंटरनेशनल जो करेंसी, द करेंसी कॉम्पोजिशन है वर्ल्ड में, वो आप कैसे, इट इज़ ऑल्सो नाउ it's being the trade of finance is being especially being shaped by the China leaning countries, and you see that how CIPS का रोल यहाँ पे important हो रहा है. Now ये तो हो गई चाइना की बात, but then she also mentions and she points out to something very important with respect to India. और वो क्या है? She says that the Reserve Bank of India has also launched a framework of trade in domestic currency, even since India has been pushing for trade in domestic currency. Ever since India has been pushing for trade in domestic currency. Also in December 2023, and India made its first ever payment in rupees for crude oil purchase from the UAE. So it's not dollar, it's in rupees that they're doing. So countries like India are moving towards domestic currency, in the international trade. So that is something very important. Now, there are certain evidences which suggest something very important, and finally it is mentioned that there are evidences which suggest non-aligned country, that is such as India, did not play an important role serving as connectors between rival blocs during the Cold War. तो अगर आप Cold War के time पे ध्यान देंगे तो India did not play a very important or big role there, likely because they had a much smaller economic footprint and global supply chains were not yet developed. लेकिन आज का जो स्थिति है, आज की स्थिति है वो डिफरेंट है. She says, but today we have greater economic and diplomatic heft and are much more integrated into the global economy, and their role as connectors this time round can help attenuate some of the cost of fragmentation, she said. So हमारी जो इंडिया की और इंडिया जैसी कंट्रीज की जो पोजीशन है वो काफ़ी डिफरेंट है from the Cold War era. So here we may play some different kind of a role also. Why we are different from the Cold War era, that has also been mentioned, and that is why you have to be, understand this particular issue not from the perspective only from the current global, economic ties, but also as it is being compared to Cold War. So it's time to also look at the world history aspect and how Cold War impacted the economic ties. So if simply I can frame a question that the Cold War impacted the economic scenario of the world, and what is the situation now, this can be a question which connects the past to the present. Now let's go to the last must read, and my last must read, I'll take you to explain section again, and I'm going to talk about this explain global, written by Alin Chauhan, and he writes why Vietnam wants us to change its why Vietnam wants US to change its non-market economy status. Now दो तीन चीजें यहाँ पे important है, that first of all you have to understand what is non-economy status, and in the process you will also know what is anti-dumping. Okay. Now what is the news about? Just look at the context. Vietnam has been pushing the Biden administration to change its non-market economic classification to market economy to avoid high taxes imposed by the United States on the goods imported from the Southeast Asian countries. Communist Vietnam has been on Washington's list of non-market economies for more than 2 decades, a list which comprises 12 countries including Russia and China. This is an important paragraph which gives you these prelims pointers. The US Department of Commerce is currently reviewing Vietnam's status. The review is set to end by late July. Now, what are non-market economy? This is very important thing you should know for your prelims current affairs based examination. तो इसमें क्या है कि the US designates a country as non-market economy based on several factors. So बहुत सारे factors हैं जिसमें country's currency is convertible, if wage rates are determined by free bargaining between labor and management, if joint ventures or other foreign investments are allowed. Other factors like human rights are also considered. Now the non-market label, अगर हम non-market label की बात करेंगे, allows the US to impose anti-dumping duties on goods imported from designated countries. So what is this dumping, or what is anti-dumping? In international trade, dumping refers to when a country's export prices are intentionally set below domestic prices, thereby inflicting harm to its industries in the importing country. Anti-dumping duties compensate for the difference between the imported goods, export price and their normal value. तो ये definition बहुत important है, उसको note down कर लीजिए, dumping and anti-dumping दोनों की. Now the level of anti-dumping duties is determined by relying on a third country. Now example यहाँ पे दिया है, say Bangladesh in Vietnam's case, which is classified as a market economy. The US would then assess the value of a product to be imported from Vietnam based on its worth in Bangladesh and then assume that this is supposed production cost to a Vietnamese company. तो एक एग्जाम्पल यहाँ पे एक्सप्लेन किया गया है. Just understand this concept. It's a very important and potential question for your exam. Now, why does Vietnam want the market economy status and what are the challenges there? This is another two questions which are addressed. But before going to it, you should be at least clear of these two definitions of the non-market economy, what it is and what is anti-dumping. तो ये चीज़ें अगर आपको clear हो जाएंगी तो ये explainer काफ़ी easy हो जाएगा. Very important explainer for your economic news. So that's all from me today. Please write to me at manas.srivastava@indianexpress.com. I'll be back again tomorrow. Think smart, work hard, conquer your goal. Bye-bye.